GeoPython maintains the pygeoapi Docker image, which is the quickest way to get pygeoapi instance up and running on your local machine. To use this image, we have to be sure that the Docker is up and running on our machine. So I can simply test it by doing docker ps, and you can see that in my machine Docker is working. And I can simply execute docker pull geopython / pygeoapi to get the instance up and running. Since I don't have that instance in my local, it will first of all pull everything, and from the next time it will take it directly from the cache. Now by the time it is installing, feel free to check out the docs.pygeoapi.io, inside which you will see a Docker related information where you can see how you can pass different ports or override the configuration.yaml file. Now in this case, we will first of all try to get Docker up and running on our local, and then we will see what all different configurations we can do with Docker. Now that we have pulled the Docker image successfully, as you can see over here, we can now run the Docker container by simply doing docker run and then assigning the port. So here by default pygeoapi will run on port 80 inside Docker, and we can route it to another port by simply adding -p and then the port that we are interested in. For example, in this case we can try with something like port 5004, and now you can see that if we go to port 5004, you will see that our Docker instance is running. But wait, there is a problem. If I try to go inside collections, you will see that it will still use localhost 5000 because the configuration YAML file which is inside the Docker container is still using port 5000. That means if we want to use port 5004, we have to pass our own configuration YAML file. To do that, we can simply create our own configuration YAML file. In my case, I had this file ready where I am running everything on port 5001, and I can simply use this file. Now to execute this, I will be using docker compose, and you can still do it on a command line itself, but for me it makes more sense to have a docker compose file ready. So I will simply go to desktop, create a new folder, and open it in code editor. Now first thing I will do is I will copy this file that I have into my docker compose because I want to use that file as my configuration file. So I will simply go to desktop, look for the folder, and I will paste it over here. And now here I will create my docker compose.yaml file. If you follow the documentation, you can simply copy the code from here and make sure that you give the path of your YAML file. In my case, it's example config. And now since my example config is routing to 5001, I will be using the same path for port mapping. Now I will simply do docker compose up, and everything looks fine over here. Now let's try to go to localhost 5001, and as you can see, our instance is up and running. If I go to any other URL, everything will work fine. To try out this again, what we will do is we will change it to something like 5050 and also map the port 5050. I will stop the docker compose and I will start it again. And there you go. Now if we go to localhost 5050, all the links will still work. So this is how we can use Docker to do the installation of pygeoapi. Thank you.